Tonight, they burned my childhood in front of 50 guests, every photograph, every memory I'd preserved, fed to the flames like common trash. My sister's laughter cut through the smoke. Good riddance. She didn't know the security camera was recording everything. She didn't know about the forged documents they'd tossed in with my photos. Tomorrow morning at 9:30 sharp, I'll burn down their empire with something far more devastating than fire the truth. Delivered with a court seal and a federal investigation notice. My name is Lila Avery, and I've spent the last decade preserving what others try to forget. At 33, I work as an archival specialist at Harbor Light Preservation in Port Townsend, where salt air seeps through 100-year-old windows and threatens every photograph, every strip of film we're trying to save. Most people don't understand what I do. They think it's just scanning old pictures. They don't see the chemistry, the precise temperature controls, the way emulsion can betray you if you breathe wrong. My father, Martin Avery, certainly doesn't understand. To him, everything is property. Flip it, profit from it, move on. His company, Avery Lux Homes, has transformed half of Bellevue's older neighborhoods into glass boxes that sell for millions. My mother Elaine manages the image, literally. She's the one who ensures every demolition looks like progress. Every displaced family appears grateful for the buyout. My sister Brooke provides the legal framework at Lexmere and Cole, making sure every contract is airtight. Every loophole favors the Avery name. I was supposed to be like them. Harvard-bound, law school, the family business. Instead, I followed my Aunt Catherine's path, the black sheep photographer who spent 40 years documenting the Pacific Northwest's disappearing coastline. When she died last year, she left me everything: her cottage at Seabrake Cove on the Oregon coast, her entire archive of negatives and prints, and something more valuable: proof that memory isn't just sentiment, it's evidence. The cottage sits on a bluff where storms hit first and hardest. Inside, I've built a climate-controlled vault for the photographs, 3,000 square feet of preservation-grade storage. The main room still smells like her developer fluid and sea salt, cigarette smoke that clung to everything despite her quitting 20 years ago. I drive down from Port Townsend every weekend, sometimes staying through Wednesday if work allows. It's become my real home, more than the apartment I keep in town. My family hasn't visited once. They came to the funeral, stood at the back, left before the reception. Elaine called the cottage depressing in that way she has of making her opinions sound like universal truths. Martin asked about the property value, then lost interest when I mentioned the conservation easements Catherine had been considering. Brooke just smirked and said, "Still playing with old pictures. They don't know I have everything backed up. 3 separate locations, including a safety deposit box they'll never find. Physical prints in archival sleeves, digital scans at 6400 dpi, every negative cataloged with provenance chains that would hold up in court. In my profession, you learn that the original is sacred, but redundancy is survival. Every photograph tells 2 stories: what it shows, and what someone might want to hide. This morning at 7:15, I got the call about tonight's party, Martin's 60th birthday, though he's been claiming 55 for the past 3 years. The theme, Elaine informed me with her PR voice, is fresh starts. Everyone brings something from their past to let go of, she said, something holding them back. We'll have a ceremonial fire. The metaphor was so heavy-handed it hurt. I asked if I needed to bring anything. Don't worry about that, sweetheart. We've taken care of it. The pause that followed told me everything. In our family, silence is never empty. It's where the real conversations happen, in what we don't say. I know the grammar of our omissions, the syntax of our suppressions. I'll be there, I said. Wonderful. 8 o'clock sharp. Don't be late. I hung up and walked to the vault, ran my fingers along the shelves of binders, each one a year of Catherine's work. She taught me that photographs aren't just images, they're evidence of what was, proof against forgetting. In the last binder, tucked behind contact sheets from her final expedition, I found what I'd been looking for: her handwritten notes about the cottage, the deed, the plans she'd made for its future. Never let them turn this into one of their projects, she'd written in her angular script. Some things shouldn't be improved out of existence. I pulled on white cotton gloves and removed 3 photographs from their sleeves. The first, Catherine at 25, standing in front of the cottage the day she bought it. The second, our whole family at my college graduation, the last time we all smiled in the same frame. The third, a self-portrait I'd taken last month with Catherine's Hasselblad, standing where she used to stand, continuing what she started. I slipped them into an acid-free envelope, sealed it with archival tape. Whatever they planned to burn tonight, these would survive. We always keep the negatives. The house in Bellevue glowed like a stage set, every window blazing against the October dark. 50 cars lined the circular drive, each one worth more than most people's homes. I parked my 10-year-old Subaru between a Tesla and a Bentley, its dust and salt spray patina like an accusation. Inside, the party was already in motion, champagne flutes catching light, laughter that sounded rehearsed, jazz trio playing something expensive and forgettable. The banner stretched across the living room, fresh starts at 60. Below it, French doors opened onto the back lawn where orange flames already danced in a copper fire bowl the size of a hot tub. Lila. Elaine materialized in Saint Laurent, her smile calibrated for public consumption. You made it. She air-kissed me, careful not to disturb her makeup. Behind her, waiters circulated with trays while guests held gift boxes wrapped in black paper the things they'd brought to burn. The fire was a nice touch, I said. Symbolic cleansing, very popular in certain circles. She waved toward the lawn. The photographer from Seattle Metropolitan is here. Try to look put together. I was wearing my work clothes, black jeans, gray sweater, boots that had seen too many archive basements. Against the cocktail dresses and dinner jackets, I looked like the help. Martin held court by the fireplace, telling the story about buying his first flip property for $40,000, selling it for 3 times that. I'd heard it dozens of times, the numbers inflating with each telling. Brooke stood beside him in lawyer armor, structured blazer, statement necklace, smile sharp as broken glass. At 8:45, Elaine clinked a knife against crystal. Time for the ceremony. We filed outside. The fire bowl threw shadows that made everyone look hollow, ancient. One by one, guests approached the flames. A man tossed in his medical school rejection letters. A woman threw her wedding album from her first marriage. Each burning was met with applause, champagne toasts, the photographer's flash turning smoke into ghosts. Then Elaine nodded to someone near the pool house. 2 men emerged carrying a cardboard box, heavy enough that they both strained. My stomach turned to ice. For our family contribution, Martin announced, we're releasing the past to embrace the future. They set the box at my feet, inside every photograph from my childhood room, school pictures, summer camps, family vacations, the album from my high school graduation, my first photography awards from the state competition, boxes of prints I'd made in the darkroom Catherine built for me when I was 14. What is this? My voice came out steady, professional, the archivist's voice, cataloging damage. Spring cleaning, Elaine said brightly. These were just gathering dust. I knelt, pulled out a print Catherine and me at the coast, teaching me to read light meters. Another my first successful large-format landscape, the one that won the National Junior Prize. Hundreds of images, some I hadn't seen in years. You went through my room. The renovation starts Monday, Martin said. We're turning it into a wellness studio. My hands stayed steady as I lifted more prints. That's when I saw them manila envelopes mixed in with the photos, legal-sized, with the cottage address typed on labels, documents that had no business being here. These aren't all mine, I said. Does it matter? Brooke stepped forward, iPhone recording. It's all old paper. Good riddance. She said it loud enough for everyone to hear, smiled for the other phones that had appeared. The Seattle Metropolitan photographer moved closer, sensing the real story. I stood slowly, holding one envelope. Through the paper, I could feel the weight of official documents, the raised seal of notarization. You want me to burn these myself. It's your choice, Elaine said, But everyone's watching. She was right. 50 faces turned toward us, waiting for the scene to play out. The fire crackled, spark-laden smoke rising toward stars we couldn't see through the light pollution. I walked to the fire bowl, picked up the first photograph, my kindergarten school picture. Gap-toothed smile, cowlick that wouldn't stay down. I held it over the flames. This is what you want. Just let go, Lila. Martin's voice carried that CEO certainty. Stop living in the past. I dropped the photo. It curled, blackened, became nothing. The crowd murmured approval. I returned to the box, gathered an armful photographs, documents, everything mixed together. The fire ate them all, democratic in its hunger. Years of memories turned to ash and ember, floating up into the dark. But as I fed the flames, I memorized what I saw. The document headers before they burned property deed. Power of attorney, title transfer, the dates, the signatures, the notary stamps that shouldn't exist yet. Brooke laughed again as a photo album spine cracked in the heat. Good riddance, she repeated, making sure the camera caught it. I smiled then. Not for the cameras, not for the guests, but for the small red light blinking in the corner of the yard, the security camera they'd forgotten about. The one that backed up to the cloud every 30 seconds. The one whose password I'd set up for them 3 years ago and they'd never changed. The fire burned for another hour. When the last photograph was ash, Martin raised his champagne. To fresh starts, everyone drank. I set my untouched glass on a table and walked back through the house, past the celebrations, past Elaine organizing group photos. In the front hall, I paused at the security system panel, its tiny screen showing 4 camera feeds. I pulled out my phone, opened the app I'd installed years ago for them, and downloaded the last 3 hours of footage from camera 3, the one with the perfect angle on the fire bowl, the box, the documents, and Brooke's performance. Outside, my Subaru started on the second try. In the rearview mirror, the house blazed with light, smoke still rising from the backyard. They thought they'd burned my past. They had no idea they'd just lit the fuse on their future. The drive to Seabreak Cove took 3 hours through midnight fog. I didn't stop, didn't play music, just listened to the rain that started near Olympia and followed me south. By the time I reached the cottage at 2:15, my hands had stopped shaking. The front door stood slightly open. I sat in the car for 30 seconds, engine running, cataloging what was wrong. The deadbolt I'd installed myself picked clean, no scratches. Professional work. Through the windows, darkness where the motion sensors should have triggered. They'd disabled the alarm. Inside, the damage was selective. The main room looked untouched, but the vault door hung open, lock mechanism destroyed with precision tools. They'd taken specific boxes, not the valuable vintage prints, not Catherine's famous series worth 6 figures. Just 3 boxes of negatives from the back corner, the ones I'd been organizing last weekend, the ones with coastal property documentation from the 70s and 80s. My laptop was gone from the desk, also missing the external drive with this year's digitization work, though they'd left the older drives in the filing cabinet, empty spaces where folders should be the cottage papers, insurance documents, anything with legal weight. I pulled out my phone, started photographing everything, the broken lock, the gaps in storage, the dust patterns showing what they'd taken. Then I saw it a single manila folder left on my work table, placed precisely in the center, inside a photocopy of a power of attorney form dated 2 years ago, my signature at the bottom, except I'd never signed this version. The original locked in my safety deposit box in Seattle, granted temporary authority for medical decisions only. This one granted complete financial control. Under it, a sticky note in Brooke's handwriting. You should have just played along. I sat down at Catherine's old desk, pulled out the burner phone I'd bought 6 months ago when things started feeling wrong. 3 calls. First, to Roger Hashimoto, the former FBI investigator who now ran digital forensics at Harborlight. Second, to Patricia Vaughn at the Oregon Consumer Protection Division, who Catherine had known from coastal preservation battles. Third, to Daniel Park, the document examiner who'd authenticated Catherine's collection for the Smithsonian. By dawn, all three had called back. Roger arrived first at 7:30 a.m. Scanner van disguised as a plumbing truck. He started with the vault, lifting prints from surfaces they'd touched. They were good, he said, but not perfect. See this? He pointed to tool marks on the lock. That particular breaching technique, 3 companies in the Pacific Northwest teach it. All keep student records. Patricia showed up at 9 a.m. with a team of 2 investigators. They documented everything while I pulled records from the cloud backup scans I'd never told anyone about, stored under Catherine's maiden name. This forged POA, Patricia said, studying the document. When exactly did you sign the real one? January 2 years ago. I was having surgery, needed someone for medical decisions. The original specifically excludes financial matters. And this one gives complete control over all assets. Look at the notary stamp. It's dated 3 weeks after my surgery. When I was recovering at the cottage, I have GPS records proving I wasn't in Bellevue that day. Daniel arrived last, at 11 a.m., with a portable lab in his trunk. He spread both documents on the light table, my scan of the original and their forgery. Amateur work, he said after 10 minutes. They traced your signature but didn't account for pressure patterns. See these hesitation marks. Also, the notary whose stamp they used, she died 18 months ago. By noon, we'd assembled the timeline. 3 months ago, Martin had the cottage appraised without my knowledge. 2 months ago, Avery Lux Homes filed preliminary development plans for Seabreak Heights, a luxury condo complex. 6 weeks ago, using the forged POA, someone applied for a construction loan against the cottage $2.5 million, approved but not yet funded. They were waiting for something, Patricia said. What changed? I pulled up the security footage from last night's party on my phone. They destroyed what they thought was the only evidence of the forgery. The original POA was in that box they burned. Except I have the original in a safety deposit box. Along with Catherine's will, clearly stating the cottage can never be sold or developed. And this, I opened another cloud folder. Every negative they stole tonight, I'd already scanned them at 6400 DPI, including the ones that show the original survey markers for the cottage property, proving the boundary lines they're claiming are off by 30 feet. Roger looked up from his laptop. There's more. The metadata from your missing laptop shows it was accessed at 4:47 a.m. today from an IP address registered to Lexmere & Cole, your sister's law firm. Patricia stood. We're opening a formal investigation. Fraud, forgery, attempted grand theft, conspiracy, the works. She looked at the destroyed vault lock. Breaking and entering, destruction of property. This is criminal, not just civil. They're having an investor presentation Thursday night, I said. Final funding for Seabreak Heights. Black tie, 150 guests. $5 million in commitments expected. Patricia smiled. How would you feel about helping us serve some papers? I walked to the window, looked out at the ocean Catherine had loved, had died protecting. I have a better idea. What if we let them think they've won first? Let them present their whole plan, get everyone there, make their promises. And then we show everyone exactly what they're investing in, not just fraud the whole pattern. Every property they've flipped using forged documents. Every family pushed out with fake papers. Daniel started packing his equipment. You have evidence of other forgeries. Not yet, but if they did it to me, I turned back to them. Roger, how many property transfers has Avery Lux done in the last 5 years? His fingers flew across the keyboard. 317. And how many involved families who couldn't afford to fight back? The room went quiet. Outside, waves crashed against the bluff, patient and relentless, wearing away everything that seemed permanent. All of them, Roger said finally. Every single one. The next 72 hours, I became someone else, not the quiet archivist who worked in basements, someone who understood that preservation sometimes means controlled demolition. Roger set up in Catherine's studio, 3 monitors running facial recognition through 5 years of Avery Lux property transfers. Patricia's team worked the legal angle, pulling records from 3 counties. Daniel examined 17 suspicious documents we'd identified by Monday evening. I worked the archives, both Catherine's and my own digital vaults, assembling proof like ammunition. By Tuesday at 6 p.m., we had it mapped 43 properties with document irregularities, 12 with confirmed forgeries, 6 families who'd lost homes to fraudulent liens. The pattern was elegant in its cruelty target elderly owners, immigrants with language barriers, anyone who wouldn't know how to fight back. "This is RICO territory," Patricia said, looking at our evidence wall. "Racketeering, FBI level?" "Thursday first," I said. "We need them all in one room, on record, claiming these properties are legally acquired." I opened my laptop, showed them the invitation I'd intercepted from Brooke's assistant's email. She'd never changed the password after I'd helped set up her calendar 2 years ago. Avery Heights Investor Night, the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, Georgian Room. Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Building tomorrow's legacy today. 200 confirmed attendees. I read, including the State Attorney General's Real Estate Division head, 3 bank presidents, and a reporter from the Wall Street Journal doing a piece on Pacific Northwest development. Roger pulled up building schematics on his screen. "The Georgian Room has a built-in projection system, 40-foot screen, state-of-the-art, installed last year. Can you access it?" Already did. The hotel's AV contractor is Precision Events. Their lead tech, Marcus Webb, lost his house to an Avery Lux project 2 years ago. He's extremely interested in helping. Wednesday afternoon. I drove to Seattle with everything backed up in triplicate cloud storage, physical drives, and a safety deposit box Patricia arranged at a credit union where Martin had no connections. At the Harbor Light office, I sat with our legal counsel, Sarah Hendricks, recording a detailed affidavit. 4 hours of testimony, every document authenticated, every date verified. "You understand what happens once this goes public?" Sarah asked. "Your family?" "They burned my photographs. They tried to steal Catherine's cottage. They've destroyed 43 families." I signed the final page. "They're not my family. They're defendants." That evening, Marcus Webb met us at a coffee shop near the Fairmont. Former Marine. Steady hands despite losing everything to Martin's schemes. "The presentation laptop connects to the main system at 7:25. He said. "Their PowerPoint is already loaded, 37 slides about Seabreak Heights." "We need 8 minutes after their presentation," I said. "Can you guarantee that?" "The system has an emergency override for fire department announcements. Once triggered, it locks out other inputs for 10 minutes. He slid a USB across the table. "Your content needs to be in this format. Max file size 2 gigs. I spent Wednesday night cutting together our evidence. Security footage of the document burning, synchronized with Brooke's good riddance. The forged signatures side by side with originals. Differences highlighted. Property records showing the pattern of theft. Catherine's photographs of the coast, overlaid with Avery Lux marketing materials using her images without permission. The cottage appraisal showing they'd already spent $800,000 in borrowed money against my property. At the end, I added something personal. A photograph Catherine took of Martin and Elaine at my college graduation, smiling, proud. Beneath it, the forged power of attorney with my signature traced by my own sister's hand. Thursday morning, Patricia's team filed the initial complaints under seal nothing public yet, but enough to freeze the construction loan the moment we gave the signal. The Oregon Coastal Heritage Board expedited my conservation easement application, the one that would protect the cottage permanently. By noon, we had 17 process servers ready with papers for every Avery Lux board member. I put on the one good dress I owned, black, appropriate for a funeral, tucked the USB into my pocket along with a backup on an SD card. Roger would monitor from outside. Patricia's team would wait in the lobby. The process servers would stay in the kitchen until signaled. At 5 p.m., Marcus sent a text. "System tested. Your file uploaded to emergency partition. Trigger word is preservation. Say it 3 times in any context. I'll start the show. I drove to the Fairmont through Thursday traffic, watching the sunset over Elliott Bay. My phone buzzed with a text from Brooke. Heard you're coming tonight. Try not to embarrass yourself. I texted back. Wouldn't miss it. After all, it's all about family legacy. At 7:15, I walked through the Fairmont's lobby. Marble floors reflected chandeliers that had witnessed a century of Seattle's deals and betrayals. Through the Georgian room's open doors, I could see the gathering developers and bankers, city council members and society reporters. Martin stood at the podium, testing the microphone. Elaine worked the room, air-kissing and arranging people for the photographer. Brooke saw me first. She crossed the room, designer heels clicking on parquet. "Surprised you came," she said. "This isn't really your scene." "Family business is everyone's business," I said. "Besides, I wanted to see your presentation. I hear you've been working on something special." Her smile sharpened. "You could say that. We're about to change the entire coast, starting with that depressing little cottage." "Catherine's cottage." "Not for much longer." She leaned in close. "You should have just sold when Dad asked nicely. Would have saved everyone a lot of trouble." "You mean saved you from committing fraud?" She laughed. "Fraud, please. Everything we do is perfectly legal. You'd know that if you'd gone to law school instead of playing with old pictures." I smiled back. "You're right. I did choose preservation over law. Turns out, that's exactly the right choice." The lights dimmed. Martin tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the future of coastal development. Tonight, you're not just investing in properties, you're investing in transformation, starting with our crown jewel, Seabreak Heights." Behind him, the screen came alive with architectural renderings, glass towers where Catherine's cottage stood, infinity pools where tide pools had existed for centuries. Martin clicked through slides, each promise bigger than the last. I stood at the back, hand in my pocket, thumb on the USB, waiting. Let them tell every lie. Let them make every false promise. Let the Wall Street Journal reporter record every word. The presentation built to its climax financial projections, pre-sales figures, artists' renderings of happy families in luxury condos built on stolen land. "In conclusion," Martin said, "Avery Lux Homes isn't just building the future. We're preserving value for generations to come." The room began to applaud. I stepped forward. "Did you say preservation?" I called out. "Because I'm very interested in preservation." Martin's smile froze. "Lila, how nice of you to—" "In fact," I continued, walking down the center aisle, "preservation is exactly what we need to talk about." The screen flickered behind him. Marcus had heard the third trigger. The emergency system engaged, locking out Martin's laptop, replacing his triumphant finale with the truth. The Georgian room fell silent as the screen went black. Then, in 40-foot glory, the security footage began our family's firebowl, the box of photographs, the documents curling into ash. The timestamp glowed in the corner. Saturday, October 12th, 8:47 p.m. "What is this?" Martin stepped toward his laptop, clicking frantically. Nothing responded. The emergency system had locked him out completely. On screen, Brooke's face appeared in high definition, champagne glass raised, laughing as she watched my photos burn. Her voice filled the ballroom through the Fairmont's pristine sound system. Good riddance. I walked steadily down the aisle, my heels marking time on the parquet. "That's my sister, everyone, celebrating the destruction of family photographs. But keep watching. It gets better." The scene shifted. Side-by-side documents filled the screen, my real signature next to the forgery. Differences highlighted in red. Daniel's analysis scrolled beneath, pressure patterns inconsistent. Hesitation marks indicate tracing. Notary deceased 18 months before supposed witnessing. Martin lunged for the projection booth. 2 security guards stepped forward. Marcus had briefed them about potential equipment interference. They held him back politely but firmly. "This is illegal." Elaine's voice cut through the murmur. "You can't just—" Every document shown has been authenticated, I said, pulling out my phone to read from Patricia's message. Case number CV 2024-8847, filed at 4:30 p.m. Today, Washington State Attorney General versus Avery Lux Homes, LLC. The screen changed again. Catherine's cottage appeared not in Avery Lux's glossy renderings, but in her own photographs. 70 years of history in black and white, the coastline raw and perfect. Then, the development plans overlaid in red, showing exactly what they planned to destroy. They've already borrowed $800,000 against my property, I announced, using forged documents. The loan officer from Cascade National Bank is here tonight, Mr. Harrison, row 3. Would you like to explain how your bank approved a loan based on fraudulent papers? Harrison stood to leave. In the lobby doorway, Patricia's investigators appeared, badges visible. The presentation continued. Relentless. 43 properties appeared in a grid, red flags marking each suspicious transfer. Elderly faces the Takahashi family who'd owned their Rainier Valley home since 1947, the Gonzalez grandmother who'd died thinking she'd failed her children when she couldn't fight the forged lien. Every single transfer will be investigated, I said. Roger, are you ready? From the back corner, Roger stood with his laptop. The FBI Financial Crimes Division has been copied on all documentation as of 6:18 p.m. Brooke pushed through the crowd toward me. You're destroying everything we built. No, I said, loud enough for the Wall Street Journal reporter's recorder. I'm preserving evidence. You destroyed everything, starting with family photographs and ending with family homes. The screen showed the cottage papers they'd burned, then cut to my cloud backup, every document perfectly preserved, including the real power of attorney that specifically excluded financial control. You thought you burned the evidence, I continued. But I learned from Catherine, always keep the negatives. Always maintain copies. What burns in one place survives in another. Marcus's voice came through my earpiece. 3 minutes left on the emergency system. I pulled out the USB, held it up. This contains everything, every forged document, every fraudulent transfer, every family you've destroyed. Copies have been delivered to the Attorney General, the FBI, the State Bar Association, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. She's lying, Martin said, but his voice had lost its CEO authority. This is a family dispute, nothing more. Is it? I clicked to the next slide on my phone, mirroring to the screen through Marcus's system. This is the email Brooke sent from her Lexmere and Cole account, directing the forgery. This is the invoice for the document preparation. This is the bank statement showing where the $800,000 went not into development, but into Elaine's PR firm for reputation management. The room erupted. Investors pulled out phones. Advisors whispered urgently. The reporter pushed forward with her recorder. Mr. Avery, she called out, do you deny these allegations? There's more, I said. The screen showed a single document, the conservation easement I'd filed for Catherine's cottage. As of 2 p.m. today, the cottage and its surrounding acre are permanently protected by the Coastal Heritage Board. No development, ever. Your crown jewel is worthless. Brooke grabbed my arm. You vindictive little process servers. Now, I said into my earpiece. The kitchen doors opened. 17 servers entered in perfect formation, spreading through the room with practiced efficiency. They found their targets board members, contractors, bank officials who'd signed off on suspicious loans. Brooke was served first, the papers pressed into her hands before she could react. Ms. Brooke Avery, you're being served with notice of ethics violations filed with the Washington State Bar. Additionally, criminal conspiracy charges are being pursued. Martin tried to leave. Patricia's investigators blocked the exit. Mr. Avery, Patricia said, stepping forward with her badge visible. I'm going to need you to come with us. We have some questions about the $800,000. Elaine Avery. Another investigator approached my mother. We need to discuss your firm's involvement in destroying evidence. The emergency system timer hit 0. The screen went black, then returned to normal. But the damage was done, not damage. Really. Truth. Preservation of what actually happened versus the story they wanted to sell. I walked back through the crowd, past investors demanding answers, past society photographers capturing the collapse, past the Wall Street Journal reporter who gave me a small nod of acknowledgement. At the doorway, I turned back. My family stood in the wreckage of their empire, Martin cornered by investigators, Elaine trying to maintain composure while being questioned, Brooke reading the bar complaint with growing horror. "You asked me to let go of the past," I called out. Martin looked up, his face aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "But the past isn't gone. It's preserved. Every document, every photograph, every lie you told. Catherine taught me that memories are evidence, and evidence doesn't burn." I pulled one last item from my pocket, a single photograph that survived the fire, one I'd kept in my car. Catherine at her cottage, smiling, holding her camera. I set it on the registration table where everyone would see it on their way out. "Good riddance," I said, and walked into the Seattle night. Behind me, the Georgian room descended into chaos. Investors withdrawing, board members resigning, my family's carefully constructed world collapsing like a building with fraudulent foundations. Through the tall windows, camera flashes created a strobe effect, each burst preserving another moment of their downfall. The 40-foot screen blazed back to life with the timestamp Saturday, October 12th, 8:47 p.m. The firebowl filled the frame, orange flames consuming photograph after photograph while 50 guests watched and applauded. The camera had caught everything, the champagne toasts, the laughter, Brooke's performance for the phones. "Good riddance." Her recorded voice echoed through the Georgian room's sound system, crystal clear, undeniable. I stood in the center aisle, wearing my archival gloves, white cotton, pristine, the uniform of someone who preserves rather than destroys. The symbolism wasn't lost on the audience. "This is what my family does," I said, my voice steady as the projection continued. "They burn histories. They erase the past. But they made one mistake. They forgot about the security camera they asked me to install 3 years ago." The screen split left side showing the fire, right side showing documents pulled from the flames just before destruction. Power of attorney, property deeds, title transfers. Each one paused long enough for the audience to read the headers. Martin pushed toward the projection booth again. "Turn this off. This is a private family matter." "Is it?" I pulled out my phone, swiped to the next clip. "Because here's Brooke, senior counsel at Lexmere & Cole, advising you on the legal framework. Here's Elaine's PR firm billing $800,000 for reputation management. Here's the forged document with my signature, notarized by someone who'd been dead for 18 months. The Wall Street Journal reporter had moved to the front, her photographer capturing every moment. The state attorney general's real estate division head Thomas Brennan, according to the seating chart, stood slowly, his face grave. "Ms. Avery," Brennan said, "are you prepared to substantiate these allegations?" I reached into my portfolio, pulled out a bound document an inch thick. Complete forensic analysis, chain of custody for all evidence, sworn affidavits from 3 expert witnesses. "Would you like the executive summary? Or should I continue with the visual presentation?" "Continue." Someone called from the investor section. "We need to see everything." The screen changed. Catherine's photographs appeared the coastline she'd documented for 40 years, the cottage in every season, the tide pools they planned to fill with concrete. Then, Avery Lux's marketing materials using those exact images, cropped and filtered but unmistakably hers. "Copyright infringement," I said. "They stole her art to sell their lie. But there's more." The forged signature appeared in extreme close-up. Daniel Park's analysis overlaid. Red arrows pointed to hesitation marks, pressure inconsistencies, the telltale signs of tracing. "My sister traced my signature," I said, looking directly at Brooke. "The woman who lectured me about playing with old pictures committed forgery, and not just once. 43 properties appeared in a grid, each with a red flag. The Yamamoto family forced out with a forged lien. The the Petersons' fraudulent tax documents. The Gonzalez estate fake power of attorney filed 2 days after Rosa Gonzalez died. Martin's lawyer, David Sterling from Sterling and Associates, stood up. "This is defamation. Will sue, please do," Patricia Vaughn said, entering from the side door with her team. "Discovery will be fascinating. Ms. Avery, please continue." I clicked to the next slide bank statements. The $800,000 transfer highlighted, "They borrowed against my cottage on Tuesday. The money went directly to Elaine's firm, not for development, for covering up what they'd done, for silencing families who asked questions." Elaine stood, her composure finally cracking. "Lila, you're destroying us, your own family." "You destroyed yourselves the moment you lit that fire. You just didn't know the camera was watching." The screen showed the cottage again, then the conservation easement I'd filed, stamped and official. "As of 2 p.m. today, Catherine's cottage is permanently protected. Your Seabreak Heights development is dead. The loan you fraudulently obtained. The bank will be calling it in tomorrow morning." Harrison from Cascade National stood abruptly, phone already at his ear. "But here's the best part," I said. The screen showed a document I hadn't revealed to anyone yet. Catherine's will included a provision I didn't know about until yesterday. If anyone in the family attempted to claim the cottage through fraudulent means, it would automatically transfer to the Coastal Heritage Trust, permanently, irrevocably. I pulled out the original will, notarized, witnessed, unassailable. "You didn't just fail to steal it. You guaranteed I could never sell it even if I wanted to. You protected it better than I ever could have." Brooke lunged forward, but a process server stepped between us, papers in hand. "Ms. Brooke Avery, you're served. Bar complaint, criminal investigation notice, and civil suit for conspiracy to commit fraud." More servers fanned through the room. Martin was served. Elaine was served. Every board member who'd signed off on the fraudulent loans received papers. The Journal reporter pushed forward. "Ms. Avery, what's your intended outcome here?" "Justice," I said. "Restitution for every family they've defrauded, criminal prosecution for the forgeries, and preservation of truth, of history, of the evidence they tried to burn." The screen cycled back to the beginning, the fire, the photos curling into ash, Brooke laughing. But now, a split screen showed what I'd saved, every document backed up, every photo digitized, every piece of evidence preserved in triplicate. "They taught me to let go of the past," I said, addressing the room but looking at my family. "But the past isn't something you burn. It's something you preserve, because it's evidence. And evidence," I held up the USB containing everything, "doesn't burn. It backs up. It replicates. It survives." Marcus's voice came through my earpiece. 60 seconds left on the emergency system. I had one more card to play. The screen changed to a live feed, the cottage at Seabreak Cove, lit by sunset. Waves crashing against the rocks Catherine had photographed thousands of times. "This is streaming live," I said. "The cottage they tried to steal, it's still standing, still protected, still preserving the coast Catherine loved. And tomorrow, it becomes a permanent archive for every family photograph Avery Lux tried to make disappear." The timer ran out, the emergency system released, but nobody moved to restore the original presentation. There was nothing left to present. Avery Lux Holmes was finished. I pulled off my white gloves, folded them carefully, placed them on the podium where Martin had stood minutes before. "The preservation is complete," I said, and walked toward the exit. Behind me, chaos erupted in full, investors demanding refunds, board members calling lawyers, reporters rushing to file stories. Through it all, the security footage played on loop on someone's phone, Brooke's voice carrying across the room. "Good riddance. Good riddance. Good riddance." The process servers moved through the Georgian room with surgical precision. Each document they delivered was another cut, another system failing, another escape route closing. Martin Avery, the lead server, a woman who'd done this for 20 years, found my father near the exit. You're being served with a cease and desist order from the Attorney General's office, effective immediately. All Avery Lux Homes operations are suspended pending investigation." She pressed the papers into his hands. Then, the next set: civil suit, representing 43 families. RICO investigation notice from the FBI. SEC filing for fraudulent investor communications. Each document had its own folder, its own case number, its own team of investigators already at work. I'd spent 3 days making sure every agency had everything they needed: pristine chains of evidence, authenticated documents, sworn testimony. Harrison from Cascade National was on his phone. Voice tight. "Freeze everything. Every account. Every transaction. No, I don't care what time it is in New York." The SEC representative, whom I'd spotted earlier in the back row, stood and addressed the room. "Any investors who've transferred funds to Avery Lux Homes in the last 90 days, please see me before leaving. You'll need to file statements." Brooke tried to push past the investigators blocking the exit. "I need to get to my office." "Your office is being sealed," Patricia said, showing her phone with a live feed. "Lexmere and Cole agreed to cooperate fully. Your computer, files, and client communications are being preserved." The word "preserved" made Brooke flinch. She turned to me, her perfect composure finally cracking completely. "You planned this. You knew what would happen." "I knew you'd trace my signature badly," I said. "I knew you'd use a dead notary's stamp because you didn't bother checking. I knew Mom would route the money through her PR firm because she always needs control of the narrative. I knew Dad would present tonight because his ego wouldn't let him cancel." I pulled out a folder I'd been holding not for the investigators, but for them. "This is a copy of every family you've destroyed. The Takahashis, who trusted you because Dad went to college with their son. The Gonzalez family, who couldn't read the English documents you shoved at them. Mrs. Patterson, 93 years old, who died thinking she'd failed her grandchildren." I set the folder on the podium. "Their photographs, their stories, the histories you tried to erase." Sterling, Martin's lawyer, stepped forward. "Any communication from this point should go through counsel." "Actually," another server said, approaching Sterling. "David Sterling. You're being served as co-conspirator. Your signature appears on 17 fraudulent transfers." The Wall Street Journal reporter had been joined by 3 other journalists, including someone from the Seattle Times I recognized from Catherine's memorial. "Ms. Avery," the Times reporter called out, "what happens to the families who lost their homes?" Patricia answered, "The Attorney General's office will be pursuing full restitution. Every fraudulent transfer will be investigated. Where possible, properties will be returned. Where properties have been demolished or sold, financial compensation will be sought." "From what assets?" someone asked. "Everything," Patricia said. "Personal assets included. The corporate veil doesn't protect against fraud." Elaine's phone rang. She answered, her face going white. "What do you mean, frozen all of them?" The conservation easement for the cottage was brilliant. Thomas Brennan, the AG's real estate division head, said to me, "Filed at exactly 2 p.m., just before the loan could be formally processed. The bank can't claim the property, and neither can they." I pulled out one more document, this one a surprise, even to Patricia. "There's something else," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. 3 years ago, when I set up the security system for my parents' house, I also set up automatic cloud backup. Every camera, every angle, every conversation within range. Martin's face went gray. 3 years of footage," I continued, "including the planning meetings in your study, the conversations about problem families, the discussions about which elderly owners to target first." "That's illegal," Brooke started, "recording without." "I had written permission," I said, pulling out another paper. "Signed by Martin Avery, authorizing complete system access for security purposes. No restrictions. Your lawyer reviewed it. Brooke, you said it was airtight." Sterling was already on his phone, probably calling his own lawyer. The servers had finished their primary targets and were working through the board members, Each person served was another crack in the foundation, another support beam failing. Mr. Chen from Eastside Development, a server called out, "You're being served for your role in the Rainier Valley transfers?" The room was emptying now, investors fleeing like rats from a burning ship. But the doors were controlled. Everyone had to sign acknowledgement that they'd been informed of the investigation before they could leave. Patricia's phone buzzed. She looked at it, then at me. The judge signed the emergency asset preservation order. Everything's frozen accounts, properties, vehicles, all of it. "You can't do this," Martin said, his voice hollow. "We built an empire. On forged documents," I said. "On stolen histories. On families you destroyed." I walked to the screen controls, pulled up one last image, Catherine's photograph of the cottage, the one she'd taken the day she bought it in 1954. Young, determined, holding the keys to her future. She taught me that photographs aren't just memories. They're evidence, proof of what was, protection against those who'd rewrite history. The red recording light on the Wall Street Journal's camera hadn't stopped blinking. Tomorrow, this would be front-page news. By next week, it would be in textbooks about corporate fraud. "Lila," Elaine said, and for once her voice had no PR polish. "You're our daughter. How could you—" "You burned my photographs," I said simply. "You looked me in the eye and burned my history. Then you tried to steal Catherine's legacy. You made it clear I wasn't your daughter, I was just another property to flip." The final server approached this one in an FBI jacket. "Martin Avery, Elaine Avery, Brooke Avery. I'm Agent Sarah Chen from the Financial Crimes Division. We'll need you to come with us for questioning. You're not under arrest at this time, but I'd advise you to contact your attorneys." I noticed Martin's hands shaking as he was led away. Elaine stumbled in her designer heels. Brooke's phone fell, the screen cracking on the marble floor. She didn't even stop to pick it up. As they passed me, Brooke turned one last time. "Good riddance," I said, quiet enough that only she could hear. The Georgian room stood nearly empty now, just investigators processing the scene, reporters filing stories, and the ghost of everything Avery Lux Holmes had pretended to be. I picked up my portfolio, checked that all my originals were accounted for. Patricia stood beside me, surveying the wreckage. "The cottage is safe," she said. "The families will get justice. Your evidence will make sure of that." I nodded, then walked to where that single photograph of Catherine still sat, her cottage, her dream, her legacy that would outlive all of their schemes. "Preserved," I said, picking it up carefully, holding it like the treasure it was. "Everything that matters is preserved." The Georgian room stood empty except for the investigators cataloging evidence and the faint smell of champagne turning sour. I walked to the projector, pulled out my USB, and covered the lens with the same careful precision I used when storing Catherine's negatives. The 40-foot screen went dark. Through the tall windows, Seattle's lights sparkled like a circuit board, indifferent to the small empire that had just collapsed in this room. I could see the reflection of the scene behind me: overturned chairs, abandoned champagne flutes, papers scattered across the floor where board members had dropped them in their rush to leave. Agent Chen approached with an evidence bag. "We'll need the original USB." I handed it over, along with the backup SD card. "Everything's in there. 3 years of security footage, the forensic analysis, the forged documents, chain of custody intact." She sealed the bag, initialed it. "Your family?" "They're not my family anymore," I said. "They're subjects of an investigation." Patricia Vaughn stood by the podium, directing her team as they photographed every angle. The Wall Street Journal reporter was still there too, typing on her phone, probably filing her story for the morning edition. "Ms. Avery," she called out. "One last question. Do you regret what happened tonight?" I thought about the photographs burning, about Brooke's laughter, about 43 families who'd lost their homes to forged papers. "I regret that it was necessary," I said. "But preservation sometimes requires exposing what others want to hide. The truth doesn't burn, no matter how hot the fire." I picked up my portfolio leather, worn, Catherine's initials still visible on the corner. Inside, the single photograph I'd saved Catherine at her cottage, young and fierce, holding the keys to her future. Everything else they'd burned had been backed up, digitized, preserved in places they'd never thought to look. But this one was the original, the one I'd kept in my car, the one that survived because I'd learned to never trust completely. Marcus Webb appeared from the projection booth, equipment bag over his shoulder. Systems back to normal. They can use it for whatever comes next. He paused. Thank you. For what you did. My family. We never thought we'd see justice. The evidence was always there, I said. It just needed to be preserved and presented. I walked through the lobby, past the marble columns and crystal chandeliers, past the valet stand where Martin's Bentley still waited. He wouldn't be driving it home tonight. My 10-year-old Subaru was parked on the street, accumulating a parking ticket I'd frame later as a memento. The drive to Seabrake Cove took 3 hours through darkness and rain. I didn't play music, just listened to the rhythm of the windshield wipers and thought about Catherine. She'd always said that photographs were proof against forgetting, but she'd meant more than just images. She'd meant truth, evidence, the stubborn insistence that what happened matters. At 1:45 a.m., I reached the cottage. The door was still broken from their break-in, but that would be fixed tomorrow. Inside, the empty vault looked like a wound, but wounds heal. I had everything backed up. The originals they'd stolen were just paper and silver. The real preservation happened in the copying, the backing up, the refusal to let anything exist in just one vulnerable place. I set Catherine's photograph on the mantel where she used to keep her favorite shots. Then I pulled out my laptop, opened the cloud storage where everything lived in triplicate. 43 families' photographs, their histories, their proofs of existence before Avery Lux Holmes tried to erase them. Tomorrow, Patricia's team would start returning what could be returned, compensating what couldn't be undone. The cottage was mine now, not just legally, but spiritually. Protected by the conservation easement, it would stand as long as the coast itself stood, a monument to the idea that some things shouldn't be improved out of existence. I made coffee with Catherine's old percolator, sat at her desk where she'd developed thousands of photographs, and watched the sun rise over the Pacific. The waves rolled in like they always had, patient and relentless, wearing away everything that seemed permanent while somehow remaining constant themselves. My phone buzzed with messages, reporters wanting interviews, investigators needing clarification, even a museum asking about Catherine's archive. But there was one message that mattered. From Patricia. All 43 families have been contacted. Restitution proceedings begin Monday. I thought about Martin in federal custody, about Elaine's PR firm being dissected by investigators, about Brooks' law license suspended pending investigation. They'd built their empire on the assumption that people like me, people who preserve rather than profit, were weak. They'd mistaken careful for cowardly, patient for passive. But preservation is its own form of power. Every document I'd saved, every photograph I'd digitized, every piece of evidence I'd backed up, it all became the foundation for their destruction. They'd burned my photographs thinking they were erasing evidence. Instead, they'd created it. I pulled out Catherine's Hasselblad, loaded a fresh roll of film. Outside, the morning light was perfect golden hour at the coast, the kind of light she'd taught me to read like a language. I photographed the cottage from the angle she'd loved best, the one that showed both the house and the vast ocean beyond it, the intersection of human ambition and natural permanence. Then I walked inside, hung my archival gloves on the hook by the door, and began the real work rebuilding the vault, organizing the evidence, preserving the truth for whoever might need it next. Because that's what we do. Those of us who understand that memory isn't just sentiment, it's testimony. The cottage stood solid around me, protected now by law and precedent, by easements and investigations, by the simple fact that I'd refused to let go when they demanded it. Through the window, I could see the waves that would outlive us all, and I thought about Catherine's words. Some things shouldn't be improved out of existence. I loaded another roll of film, There was still so much to document, so much to preserve. The work never really ends, it just continues. One photograph at a time, one piece of evidence at a time, one truth at a time. Good riddance to what burns. Everything that matters is already backed up, waiting in the dark like undeveloped film, ready to become evidence when the moment demands it. The preservation is complete. The restoration has just begun. Thank you for listening to this story of justice served cold and evidence preserved forever. Where are you listening from today? I'd love to know. Drop a comment below, and let's connect across the miles. If this tale of family betrayal and calculated revenge resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Lila's position? The comment section is open for discussion, and every perspective matters, just like every photograph deserves to be preserved.